Talk to me more about that first year, because when you believe in something and you push it out, you expect instant results. And if you're waiting for a whole year for you to see the results that you want, were you questioning that, was this the right approach? Should we try something else?
Questioning yourself and second guessing yourself is part of the game, right? And I would say that if you're not questioning and second guessing yourself, then, you're doing something wrong. So I think we were definitely questioning what we are doing, challenging ourselves. But we never reached a point where we wanted to give up. I think that's the difference is while we were frustrated, we were trying new things, and we were second guessing our own decisions, and clearly some things we got wrong. But we never reached a point where we thought, should we pack up and just go home? I think, as much as in times like this, as much as, the founders and the management need to be resilient and believe in their ideas, it's equally important to have the humility to accept that maybe you didn't get this right and something needs to change and something needs to be tweaked. And I think as in entrepreneurial journeys, we hear a lot about, the push for, hey, believe in yourself, be confident in what you're doing, stick to your plans. All of that is very important. No, not discounting that. But I think not enough credit is given to being flexible and having the humility to look back and accept that you did something wrong and adjusting.
I underestimated how much of my life would be taken up by what we were doing. So maybe not necessarily the sector itself, but what it entails to be successful in your own business. I guess we were a little bit out of our depth. There wasn't that many resellers on the market. In London, there was probably 2 or 3 before us, and they were very small and nobody really knew anything about them. So when we entered into the world of luxury goods, although we were already resellers and we did sell luxury goods, it wasn't the main body of what we did. We did a bit of everything. You have to learn. We were constantly learning all the time. We were, teaching ourselves things, and every mistake that we made, we learned a lesson from it. And every mistake that happened, we would implement, new legislation, new terms and conditions for the company, every single step of the way.
Someone once told me when I first got into entrepreneurship is that it's exactly like assembling a plane while it's taking off.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it felt. You have to kind of pick up things and learn on the go.
I think for me, a young entrepreneur that wants to get into any field, my advice is always find the best, copy them, but do it better. And the way you do that is by checking out their business and seeing the mistakes that they're making. And that's the way that you're going to become better.
What was a bad investment that you made that you now regret?
Yeah, the worst investment I ever made was lending people money. And I've learned how to say no. In the past, when people asked me, can I borrow some money? I would say, I don't have it. But that was a lie. Okay, and honesty is really important, my value. So I was vibrating against my honesty. So what I say now is, actually, I do have the money, okay? But I'm not going to give it to you because every single time I've lent somebody money, it's ended up sour. And I've lost their friendship. And I end up chasing them. Because the moment that my money comes from my pocket into yours, you feel it's yours, right? So I'd rather not give it and keep our friendship. What the worst thing is people don't value advice. I've never get somebody saying, can I spend time with you to learn? And I value that more than any money. Business, you take a risk. So you burn yourself, you move on. And if I actually sit down and add up all the times I've made bad investments, it's quite depressing. I made quite a large investment in Switzerland and I did it through a trust of a broker. Later on, I found out the broker took 30% cut. If I knew that, I would never have invested. So this broker got particularly rich out of investors.
That's a lot. That's unheard of.
It should be 2 or 5%, right? And the thing was, it was in your terms and conditions, but who reads all the terms and conditions? So that was hard to swallow. And I went to Switzerland. And during this period, I actually noticed that They're spending money frivolously on cars and travels and first class flights and stuff. And I actually highlighted to the broker, and the broker said, no, these consultancy companies are doing regular reviews, and we're going to be fine. And they weren't fine. I went to see this chap or the board, that young board that we invested in, and they were just on some cloud cuckoo land. And I walked away and I thought, I'm never going to get that money again. And we move on. Stupid me, trust the broker. Stupid me, not look at the terms and conditions. And I'll never make that mistake again. Costly experience, but it's only money, right? End of the day, if people are listening, they don't have the money and go, oh, you just shrug it off and say it's only money. But if you know the game, of money, you can always get it back. But if you lose your time, you can never get that back. So don't spend, what I say is really important that you learn from your lessons, but don't live in them. Because if you're living in that pain, you're not going to have quality of life. Remember it, move on, never forget.
But in terms of us being honest here, what was your biggest regret in business?
I had a period in my life where I was struggling with substance abuse, and I was self-medicating, and unhappy, burned out, etc. And I think that was the biggest challenge, because I think I didn't know, maybe I didn't want to acknowledge that I was doing that, and I didn't know really. And some people tried to help me and tried to intervene, and I tried to hide it. And I tried to, instead of confronting it, when I finally confronted it, one, I actually helped myself heal and be better. And I've been better for many years. I became more productive. I didn't realize how many days I was losing in hangovers. And hangovers are awful, just awful. And it was self-inflicted misery. And so I was doing that on like these weekend warrior events. And then I would just feel terrible for days. And I realized in hindsight, it was hitting an escape. It was the only time I felt unworried about my stresses, my worries, my concerns. And it was not healthy for me, right? It was hurting my health. It was hurting people I loved. And it was definitely affecting my performance. I luckily managed to get through and carry things forward. But I think that was a decision I regret, where a personal behavioral challenge was affecting my life and I was containing it. And it definitely affected, the speed with which I was able to get things done. I say now, I'm always me. And, I call it living in the gray. You don't have the high highs, you don't have the low lows. You're always okay. But even on my weekends, I'm up at 6 or 7:30 in the morning. I am always able to be on a moment's notice, prepared. I'm productive, and maybe too much so. I should rest more. But I didn't have that when I was struggling, right? When I didn't realize the time I was losing on that. And maybe to others who maybe probably drink or do whatever you do more than you know, or more than you'd like to admit, if you can eliminate that piece of your life, not saying if you drink, but modestly, but hopefully you don't, it's healthier. But if you can eliminate that piece of your life, the time you gain is shocking. I mean, even just one day every week or every 2 weeks, imagine how hard it would be to find 8 hours back in your schedule. We all struggle to find an hour or two, 8 of them, and do that every week. Compound that across a year, the things you could accomplish in your life, in your fitness goals, in your personal goals, etc. So one, it's probably the demon that I faced and I struggled with that hurt me. But then also I think my advice to others is, if you ever struggle with something similar, sort it out quickly. Get help. There's no shame in that. And once again, if you went to people and said, I'm struggling, what awful person is going to sit here and put you down? They're going to be like, how can I help?
Thank you for being honest. I'm sure that would help a lot of people.